Welcome back to Joy Recaps. Today, I'm going to explain a horror thriller movie called The Mist. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The artist David, his wife Stephanie, and their 8-year-old son Billy seek refuge in Bridgeton, Maine, from a severe thunderstorm that causes significant property damage the following morning. Billy looks around their property and notices that their neighbor Brent's tree has caused damage to their boathouse. The family notices a mysterious mist hovering over the lake in front of them while looking at the boathouse. It appears to be coming from the mountain across from them, but they didn't give it much thought and continued on. David visits his neighbor to discuss exchanging insurance information in order to pay for the boathouse repairs. In that conversation, he learns that during the thunderstorm, another tree crashed into Brent's car, crushing it. As a favor, he drives Brent to the town while his son rides in the backseat. They pass a few suspicious-looking military vehicles traveling the opposite direction of them as they make their way into town. Following the destructive storm last night, many people, including David, his son, and Brent, went to the grocery store to buy food. Suddenly, military and police vehicles rush past the store while sirens can be heard. Dan Miller, an elderly man, runs into the store screaming that something in the mist has taken a young man and has bloodied his nose. People believed him to be insane. Now a mist begins to slowly but steadily surround the store, and a sudden earthquake appears, sending everyone into a panic. After what just happened, people are hesitant to leave the store, but one woman insists that she must see her daughters. She abandoned them and let the older child, who is 8 years old, watch the younger child. Since the older one occasionally forgets to check on her sister, she is concerned about them. She decides to leave alone and enter the mist because no one would agree to accompany her. She was never seen again. In an effort to relax, groups of people started to form and would start talking about the good old days. Ollie Weeks, the store manager, advised David to look in the logging dock if he wanted to find blankets for his son. He decides to turn off the emergency generator once he enters the dock through the back door and notices that it is producing a lot of smoke due to a malfunction. David hears a strange noise, as if something were pushing against the garage door, coming from behind it in the stillness of the night. When he returns inside and alerts a group of nearby men to the noise, they don't believe him and instead choose to open the door so they can fix the generator. He got into a fight with the citizens, telling them it wasn't safe to be outside. One of the guys was upset by that because he claimed David thought they were stupid and looked down on them. The bagger boy Norm opens the garage door against David's advice in an effort to show his bravery. But as soon as he does, a tentacled creature grabs him by the leg. The boy is killed as a result of David and Ollie's inability to free him from the monster's hold. Before closing the door, the others just about manage to drive the creature away and use an axe to cut off one of its tentacles. They debate whether or not to be honest with everyone else in the store and then discover that it is not as secure as they had believed. Even after being informed of what had occurred in the logging dock, the customers refused to believe it and simply laughed it off as a joke. But after presenting them with the tentacle they were able to cut off as proof, their perspectives began to change. David and Ollie instructed the customers to barricade the storefront windows after the store owner confirmed that a threat existed. The children in the store are terrified when Mrs. Carmody, a religious fanatic, starts preaching about an impending Armageddon and how this is their day of judgment, brought on by God. Angered by Mrs. Carmody's conceit, a teacher named Amanda Dunphy intervenes and slaps her to silence her. A group of skeptics, led by Brent Norton, decide to leave the store in the hopes of finding help outside because they don't believe that any monsters exist. When David tries to reason with Brent, his neighbor becomes even more irate. One of the residents of the town offers to go out and attempt to retrieve a shotgun from Ambrose's truck in the hopes of being able to secure some weapons. They decide to tie a rope around his waist in order to see how far he can travel. The rope begins to be pulled quickly for a few seconds as the group moves into the fog before coming to an abrupt stop. David begins pulling the rope back inch by inch, expecting the worst as fear and silence fill the room. Blood suddenly began to appear on the other side of the rope, only the lower half of the biker's body being visible at its very end. The children's eyes were protected from the horror they had just seen as the entire store gasped in awe. After seeing the evidence, the populace begins to take the threat seriously. Some people lit up the store in advance of the evening in the hope that the lights would frighten the animals away. Unfortunately, that tactic only serves to draw in the unsettlingly large flying insects. They manage to break the glass and infest the shop by repeatedly slamming against it. Everyone begins to panic and flee from the creatures, though some of them failed to do so. Sally, the store clerk, was stung in the neck when one of the wasp-like creatures flew right into her. 2 people are killed by the insects in the ensuing panic, and another is burned to death in an attempt to burn the insects. One man in particular was in mourning over Sally's passing. Jessup, who had only moments earlier confessed his feelings for her. Mrs. Carmody accurately portrayed a scene from the Bible in which a similar incident occurs and a person is miraculously spared from an insect in the midst of the chaos, inspiring her to evangelize more ardently and win converts among the survivors. Ollie, the store manager, shoots one of the insects in the meantime, preventing it from attacking Billy and saving his life. A small group, led by David, visits the nearby pharmacy the following morning in search of medical supplies and any other survivors who might have sought refuge there. When Amanda and others reminded him of how far the biker got before he was actually killed, he didn't believe it was risky enough to stop at the pharmacy despite the possibility that he might leave his son orphan. Even Mrs. Carmody cautioned them against leaving before being struck in the head by a cannon, launching into a monologue of her religious speech. It turns out that Irene Repler, an ex-teacher who instructed her to keep her mouth shut, was the one who threw it. They arrived at the pharmacy rather quickly after navigating the fog. They felt secure because it was quiet inside. However, they also find a dead group of people led by Brent inside the pharmacy, along with a nest of enormous spiders. Millions of new spiders hatched from the remains of these people. They are attacked by the same enormous spiders that killed 2 men by skinning and maiming their prey with their burning web. A second spider confronts Dan as he makes an effort to flee, and he brutally stabs it with just a stick as it stands in front of the exit door. Fortunately, the remaining members of the group return to safety inside the shop. Mrs. Carmody, who had opposed the expedition, leverages this setback to gain more power by promising new converts protection from divine wrath. Many Christians would begin to gather in prayer groups and welcome any new members. David believes that the military is responsible for this tragedy because he remembers the unusual final words of the soldier who died in the pharmacy. "I'm sorry." They discovered that 2 of the other soldiers who were imprisoned in the store with them had killed themselves, probably as a result of the guilt they felt. When questioned, the 3rd soldier, Jessup, admits that there was a government project at the base to discover other dimensions and that scientists might have unlocked a doorway into a dimension containing the invaders of the town. Following their fury at learning these details, Mrs. Carmody's supporters stab Jessup and sacrifice him. They kick him out of the store, and a huge insect resembling a praying mantis eats him up right away. Billy, David's son, asks his father to promise him not to let the monsters take him after witnessing such traumatic scene. The following morning, David and his group, Amanda, his son Billy, Ollie, Bud, Irene Repler, and Dan Miller, get ready to leave the store in order to escape the irrational coven that has taken up residence there. They attempt to enter the house through the front door while everyone is still asleep, but Mrs. Carmody meets them there. She describes God as a monster who demands a blood sacrifice in order to be pleased and claims to be God's vessel. She demands Billy be offered as the following victim. In the commotion, David was prepared to engage her in combat in order to defend his son. But Ollie shoots her dead first in her rage of insanity. He then intimidates her traumatized supporters into quitting, allowing the group to flee. He makes every effort to get to David's van, but he and 2 others are eaten by the creatures. Fortunately, Bud at least succeeds in running back inside the shop. In the end, only David, Billy, Amanda, Dan, and Irene are able to get to David's car. David narrowly escapes a monster attack while attempting to take Amanda's pistol from the car hood, but succeeds in obtaining the weapon, which he thought would be useful. Through the fog, they make their way to David's house, where he discovers Stephanie already dead and dangling from spider webs. He is horrified by what he has witnessed and decides to expel everyone from the community. Along the way, they come across a massive 6-legged beast and several abandoned cars on the highway. They always exhaust their gas after a long drive. Without any way to flee the gloomy surroundings and terrifying sounds that are closing in on their car, David takes out Amanda's gun and suggests that they shoot themselves rather than suffer a terrible fate. He counts the remaining rounds and realizes they are short one. He makes the decision to kill himself rather than let the others suffer. Billy wakes up with a gun to his head and fires a shot just before shooting his son first. For better or worse, his wish to avoid being taken by the monsters had come true. Before leaving the car and being taken by the creatures, David shoots the remaining 3 survivors with the remaining bullets. While they are still waiting, the mist suddenly begins to clear, revealing the vanguard of a U.S. Army armored column that is eradicating the creatures and re-establishing order. He sees the store employees, including the woman who had left to see her children, who were saved after they had left, on one of the trucks. David then continues to scream in agony as he realizes that he killed his son and the other survivors for no reason.